This is the Play Your Position podcast, where we huddle up, call the plays, and inspire you to run your ball into the end zone. Are you ready to score more game-winning touchdowns in your life, business, and career? Then listen up, because it's game time, baby. Now, here's your host, Mary Lou Kaiser.
Hey, Team PYP, Mary Lou Kaiser here. Welcome to today's episode of the Play Your Position podcast. I hope you're having a great day so far. Here we are, 6 weeks out from turning the calendar into a new year. I don't know about you, but that is really hard for me to believe. Gosh, where did 2023 go, right? I've had incredible conversations this year with some of the most interesting people. And if you're new here, I encourage you to go back and take a listen to as many episodes as you want, but certainly the ones from this year, the most recent, and some great people. And I've still got some people on deck for you before that fated New Year's Eve is upon us. In today's episode, I wanted to talk about something that dawned on me the other night when I was watching the Country Music Awards. I'm a rock and roll girl. I have been since I was a teen. I grew up in a home where my father, definitely an audiophile, a massive record collection. He had vinyl, CDs, cassette tapes. I think in one box we found some of those reel-to-reels. I mean, my dad loved listening to music. He was a big classical music guy. He also loved folk music, and he was a fan of the opera. He and Mom had season tickets to the Metropolitan Opera in New York City, and he just loved opera. Now, I was not a fan of opera growing up, and it's still not something that I gravitate towards. I appreciate the art form. It is incredibly taxing. I have met and interacted with some professional opera singers in my day, and they're wonderful people, and they have an incredible work ethic, and what they're able to do with their voices is phenomenal. And the title of today's show, you might have been intrigued, like, why am I obsessed with Chris Stapleton, who is a country music artist? He's won numerous awards, and he's got some hits right now. If you listen on Spotify like I do, or you might listen on Apple or Amazon streaming, wherever you get your music. He performed at the Country Music Awards, and the song he sang is called White Horse. Now, I had not heard that song until I saw him perform it live, and I immediately fell in love with it. And I think partially because it has some rock roots to it. You can hear traces of Leonard Skinner, the Allman Brothers, certainly influence in there. And that would be considered Southern rock for you younger folks who might not be familiar with the different genres of, my coming of age, which was the 80s. Rock and roll was certainly classified back then and as it is today. But country music in the last, I would say, really since the advent of the internet and social media, has become a very different thing. If you're a fan of music, whether you're like my dad, who perhaps gravitate more towards the classical scene, or you're more like me and you have a very wide range of tastes, which I do. If you look at my main playlist on Spotify, I've got everything from Five Finger Death Punch to Brandi Carlile to Chris Stapleton to Hardy. I've got some Miley Cyrus in there, some Lady Gaga, Madonna, Justin Timberlake. I mean, I'm all over the place. It's because I appreciate good music. And I appreciate good music, I think, because musicians, like all artists who are truly committed to their path, are playing their positions, right? I'm drawn to people who do that in their life, who commit to, whether it's an art form like music or painting or writing, or it's a work form, as it were, like engineering or construction or sales. It doesn't really matter. I love people who know who they are and are playing their positions to the best of their ability. And at an awards ceremony like the Country Music Awards, that's where you're going to see the people who are currently at the top of their game. And now, I know that some people who are professionals and are at the top of their game don't have their shit together behind the scenes. I understand that. We read about those stories all the time on Instagram and People magazine. Certainly, the recent death of actor Matthew Perry proves that. He was at the top of his game and he was massively addicted to alcohol and opioids. He didn't have his act together. He was human and he tried desperately to, fight back against those demons that captured him. On a side note, if you have not read or listened to his memoir, I recommend it. I bought it the day he died. I know that sounds strange, but it had been on my radar, but I hadn't gotten around to it. So once I learned of his death, I bought it, listened to it in one day. He reads it. It was haunting. It was beautiful. It was tragic. And it really pointed to this big idea that I'm getting at today about playing your position, having your life together, being at the top of your game. All right. It's really, really easy for those of us who are not famous to look at famous people and make assumptions about them in terms of how their life is, in terms of their leadership capabilities, in terms of their decision-making capabilities. And I like to believe in the goodness of humanity. I like to believe that people are showing up and doing the best they can. Now, sometimes that is not the case. Sometimes forces that are bigger than ourselves can come in and take over. In the case of Matthew Perry, I don't know Chris Stapleton personally. I am a newer fan of his work, and why I'm focused on him right now has to do with one, his presence at the CMAs. The way he performed that song White Horse was, to me, the mark of the essence of showing up, being yourself, and winning in the moment. If you find that clip, I imagine you can find it on YouTube. I'll see if I can find it, and I'll put a link to it in the show notes page. The way, just his presence. Now, this guy, he has a huge, thick beard and mustache, and he wears his hair long. But there's something about his essence that just draws me to his energy. And then the song, which I know he is not 100% responsible for, all songs are a collaboration of one kind or another. The way he plays the guitar, the way he sings the lyrics themselves, I think, are also why I like the song. They resonate with me, even though I'm a woman and he's singing from a male perspective. I tend to take poems and lyrics and texts that I read. When I talk about texts, I mean books that I read, and I make them universal. If a man is writing the book and is using the pronoun he and him and his, I will just automatically apply it to me. Obviously, if I'm reading a book written by a woman, I don't have to do that same kind of translation in my head. And if I'm reading something or listening to something by someone who shows up without a pronoun or has the they, again, I'm looking at the universal. What is the message here? I think what Chris Stapleton embodies for me is someone who knows who he is and chooses to show up fully when he's called to. And also, I'm imagining when he's not called to. I mean, we're called every day to show up, and when it's an award ceremony, you're going to be on national television and broadcast around the world. Certainly, you are going to probably show up on your best behavior. Although you can go back in time and look at some award ceremonies and you can tell that there were people who did not do that. And again, that's the human condition. I really have no judgment for people because I know my own flaws. I know my own weaknesses. I know when I have not shown up fully present. And in hindsight, I look back and say, well, lesson learned. You gotta show up. So his performance at the CMAs was electrifying, and it again, and the song White Horse, if you look it up on Spotify, that's where I listen to my music, or I think you just go to YouTube. And he talks about in that song, this love is getting kind of dangerous. The chorus is, if you want a cowboy on a white horse riding off into the sunset, hold on tight, girl, I ain't there yet. A man's got to do what a man's got to do. That message of following our freedom, our passion or pursuit of freedom, of finding ourselves before we commit to a relationship, that's a powerful message, especially in our time today, because everybody is on the internet all at once. Everybody is on the internet all at once who are choosing to go on the internet. Everybody who chooses to go on social media is on social media all at once. And so we can see people as young as, tweens with their message, and as old as people in their hundreds with their message, and everything in between. And there's never been a time in human history when all the voices all the time are there. At any moment, you can log on, just open your phone and open an app. And there is every story, every archetype being played out. And this is one of the biggest leadership challenges of our time, is no matter what role you have in your life, as a parent, as a business owner, as a top-level employee, as a community member, as a member of the human race. I don't care what category you put yourself in, what tribe you affiliate yourself with. If you listen to this show, leadership matters to you, personal growth matters to you, showing up matters to you. And when we become more aware, one, of what other people who are at the top of their game are doing, people like Chris Stapleton, and we pay attention to them and we make a study of them, okay, their art or their work, what they're putting out on their socials or their websites, what kinds of things they're saying in interviews. I mean, that's the thing about today is you got to play the visibility game if you're going to be at the top of your game in certain industries. Not all. I know plenty of people who are doing quite fine in their particular industry, and they're not on social media at all. So social media itself is not required. Again, my point here is people like Chris Stapleton embody being at the pinnacle, showing up fully. There is 100% authenticity there. And yes, he's a businessman. He is in the business of entertainment. He is in the business of producing content through music and performance in order to pay his bills, in order to feed his children, in order to keep a roof over his head. He's no dummy, right? The people who are in top leadership roles like that, they're usually not stupid. And we can learn a lot from them. I tend to gravitate towards artistic performances. It might be a production of Hamilton. It might be Chris Stapleton performing White Horse on the CMA show. It might be trying to think of who one of my favorite quarterback. Well, if I look at my beloved Oregon Ducks, it might be Bo Nix, the quarterback at the Oregon Ducks right now. He shows up each week to the game, shows up to practice. Is he perfect? No, nobody is. But when you watch him play, man, you just know this is somebody who is truly playing their position. The women that I look at, Mariska Hargitay, for example, who plays Olivia Benson on Law and Order SVU. What's cool about social media is now we can follow people like Mariska and Bo Nix and Chris Stapleton and get a glimpse into their behind the scenes. And yes, most of their feeds are featuring the different events that they attend. But what I also have noticed is there's more accessibility to the humanity of famous people through social media than at any other time. And being able to glimpse into the window of a person like Chris Stapleton or Mariska Hargitay or even Bo Nix is affirming for us. It helps us say, okay, yes, I can achieve big things and I can also have a bad day. Not everything is going to be great. Someone in my life is going to die. Someone in my life is going to get sick. Someone in my life is not going to get the role in the school play that they wanted. So there's disappointment and there's discouragement and there's, if you want to use that word, failure for everybody. And my current obsession with Chris Stapleton, I think, has to do with realizing and acknowledging how beautiful life is when we can show up fully ourselves, the flaws and the triumphs, the scars and the beauty, right? So that is my message for today, team. I hope this inspired you to maybe listen to some music that you love in a new way, or just find some new music, or just affirm for yourself that you're on the right path. And even if it's not going 100% the way you want it right now, or maybe moving too slowly, or maybe it's moving too fast and you're like, I just want to slow down time. It can be that way too, especially if you're raising children. You will want to slow time down. I certainly did, and I couldn't. So I was as fully present with them all the way through. And I wasn't always. Again, I had days, and so did they. So I would recommend, if you like country music and you haven't heard White Horse, I'd recommend it. If you like the old school Southern rock like Leonard Skinner, give Chris Stapleton a shot. He's got some great lyrics. And I'm recording this without knowing a whole lot about him personally. I'm just looking at what he as an archetype to me represents in the grand scheme of leadership and playing our positions, being true to who we are, and winning at the game called life. And that's what I wish for all of you every day, all day long. So team, thank you for spending some time with me today. And remember, it's always a great day to get out there and play your position. This is Mary Lou Kaiser. We'll catch you next time.
Here at the Play Your Position podcast, we believe that the road to self-mastery and a life well lived starts with answering the call to leadership. That's when the fun really begins. Send this episode to any friends who might need to hear the inspiration and ideas you heard today. And feel free to rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform.